Hi everyone! This video will be about the 3 approaches you could take to converge in your group session. Converging is the stage where you evaluate and focus options. There are several techniques to help you converge deliberately. And you will find that good techniques embed the ground rules of converging. Let's take a look at the various approaches to converging. The first approach includes intuitive techniques, which are often fast-paced and gut-driven. It's about quickly sensing what feels promising. A ground rule that is often emphasized in this approach is respecting the head, heart, and gut. This approach is particularly helpful when you still have many options on the table and want to create some initial focus or direction. Often at an early stage of the creative process, as you can see in this graph. And some examples are hits or dots or fast-paced paired comparison. Let's take a closer look at the technique hits or dots to better understand the power of this approach. Assume you have 100 options to choose from. Then you can ask the participants to put a sticker, a dot, at those ideas that hit them. Of course, remind them to apply affirmative judgment. Now, what makes this a good creativity technique? Well, because it embeds some of the ground rules for converging. It's not just dot voting, there is more to it. First of all, it's important to consider the meaning of the dots that you're using. For example, green dots are options that hit you, and orange dots are novel options that you find intriguing. By using the orange dots, the ground rule protect novelty is embedded in the technique. But there's more. The number of dots is essential in this technique as well. Often, people hand out only like 3 dots to each person in the resource group in case there are 100 options to choose from. And what happens if people get 3 dots? They will start to think very critically. 100 options, and I can only pick 3. Which one shall I choose? Which do I really think could work? So mainly using the head. However, we want the resource group to respect their heart and their gut as well, remember? Therefore, the resource group will receive the square roots of the number of options. In case of 100 options, the square root would be 10. 10 green dots per person. And in addition, you can hand out 1 or 2 orange dots. And with 11 or 12 dots, participants feel freer to choose intriguing options, even if they do not fully understand them yet. And that's exactly what we want. After all, new ideas are never perfect from the start. The second approach, argumentative. In this approach, the group weighs the pros and cons of each option more thoroughly. You can imagine that this approach works best when you have fewer than 10 options. An example of a good technique is UALO. Why is this a good technique? Because again, it embeds the ground rules of converging. UALO evolved from itemized response, which was developed as part of the synectics method by Gordon and Prince. And UALO comes in many different names, such as plus-minus reaction, PMI, ALU, PPC, points, IPC, praise first, probably more. What they all have in common is that the affirm first mindset is integrated in the technique. UALO stands for unique, advantages, limitations, and overcoming limitations. So when evaluating a concept, the first question is, what makes this concept unique? Then a list of advantages will be made. And you probably recognize the affirm first mindset already. Because only once the advantages are listed, limitations can be listed. Ideally in the form of a how-to question. So instead of saying it's too expensive, you should say how to make this cost effective. Finally, initial thoughts about how to deal or overcome some of those limitations will be listed. All right, the third approach, criteria-based converging. Here, the group evaluates options using agreed-upon criteria. For example, feasibility, attractiveness, novelty. This approach is especially helpful when you are ready to make decisions and need to prepare for action. Again, use it when you are down to fewer than 10 options. An example could be criteria and ranking, in which first a set of criteria is developed while applying the mindsets for diverging, reverging and converging accordingly. And then the criteria is used individually to evaluate a set of options on a sheet of paper. Then these sheets will be used to discuss the value of promising options and to make the ranking. You might know some criteria-based techniques as well, but be mindful. This approach is tricky because the ground rules are not automatically well integrated in most of these techniques. You will have to integrate them yourself. For example, adding criteria like attractiveness and novelty will stimulate to also respect the head, heart and the gut, and to protect novelty. There are many tools and techniques to help with converging, but they usually align with one of these three approaches. Remember that not every decision-making tool is suitable in the creative process. The key is to embed the ground rules in the techniques that you are using. A good converging approach will bring clarity about what to focus on, shared commitment, and a sense of forward momentum. Thanks for watching.